Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and I hope those of you who are not here in the States have adjusted yourselves to our daylight saving time that happens twice a year. I hope everything's okay. AJ, hey, good to see you here in this show. I appreciate it. And uh, if you don't know and you're not familiar with the channel, sometimes we'll delve into a subject that is pretty tropish, dare I say boring, some kind of overused element in the tabletop RPG community, and kind of take it and twist it and take it apart and maybe even analyze, like, why are we into this particular subject. So today we're going to talk about cults. It's Monster Monday, and some of the worst monsters ever to be created is humanity itself, right? Like, if you really want to delve into the most horrible, decadent, bestial, um, evil aspects of humanity and of creatures, it's humanity itself. And cults kind of like embody this the best, dare I say, best storytelling elements of delving into evil, right? Because these are it's like it's organized, it's seductive. Apparently cults are able to recruit more individuals. It's also a little bit of giving up on current society to want to be in this smaller group of individuals that feels that there needs to be a new a change. Cults are responsible for rituals and summonings and the downfall of communities you have in your world building. And they make really good. You need to punch something in the throat. Like, cults are, they don't necessarily need to be handled with kid gloves, right? Like, it's much like the idea of demons and devils, fiends from the lower planes, or um, uh, mindless creatures summoned from distant realms or something like that. There's something about the cult members that maybe at one point they could have been saved, and we'll talk about, like, the prospect of I would say, like, rescuing cult members versus like punishing them and giving them the one true death and whatnot. But I will say that there's something comforting when it comes to using tropes, and cults, I think, are like taverns and campfires. A cult can be the dare I say, can be a microcosm of elements that you have in your world, and is like it's like a shorthand to tell your players about bigger picture issues in your world. And I think it can be undersold for people who just roll their eyes and go, well, do we really want another cult? Oh, and you roll your eyes and you're trying to think of something new. And I go, no, I mean, there's a reason why they've stuck around so long. And so let's get into our what our co-hosts have to say here, and then we'll get into some of the particulars with cults, and then ways we can, like, tweak them a little bit. So at least in our world, when the player characters bump up against them, we can go, oh yeah, maybe that's a good twist. So AJ Pickett, by the way, guys, please, 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 if you haven't already, go over to AJ Pickett's YouTube channel. Go to social medias. Just subscribe. You won't be disappointed. But anyway, he says in the Palladium system, they make perfect sense as they allow spellcasters to gain additional potential psychic energy to create spell effects. In D&D, they make sense as a means to quick power. I always wondered, having cults having been around so long, you would think mechanically that there would have been something in the game, at least, like, a mechanical effect where like the ratio of ratio of cultists versus spell casting would at increase some kind of way, so it gives the players like an incentive, like, oh well, there's 17 cultists, that means they're going to summon a ripping this out of my ass. Like a CR-17 creature. If we get rid of at least five of them, the creature they summon will be like or the top three cultists are casting spells at us. If we reduce their number, the amount of d6s they roll for their fireballs is going to decrease or something. I'm just very surprised that they haven't done. Someone didn't come up with a mechanical effect for that. Not that you can't do that on your own, but yeah. Yeah, and it goes on to say, yeah, AJ goes on to say, in Cthulhu, it's that seductive drive to uncover a mystery that leads to inevitable doom. And there, I think the seductive part of cults is important to like delve into too, because one of the things that drives a cult is their recruitment. And cults could very easily, I mean, especially people who are downtrodden, they're depressed, they're in their lowest moment, and these individuals are able to recruit them when they're in their lowest moment. I mean, just imagine how easy it would be to recruit members like the prototypical village that gets sacked by goblinoid hordes, rampaging dragon, all the crazies that are in Dungeons and Dragons. I think a percentage of those villagers would be like, I want some payback. And it would be pretty easy for a cultist to go, hey, come with us. There's a way for us to get some payback on this world, even if it means annihilating the entire world, right? And let's open a portal to the lower realms to start this blood war between the celestials, and even if it means their own demise. It's like, yeah, we need to reset this place. And the absolute belief that they're right, that they're the heroes in their own story, is, I think that's another thing that can drive players to um not to be seduced by them, but to not realize that they're looking at these cultists right in their face, especially in the beginnings of your campaign or something, because a lot of them are just going to be like, yeah, the world's pretty much over, so the rest of all this, all the accoutrement that's around us and stuff, nah, no need, no need. I'm just going to live out my life till Cthulhu is awakened or summoned or comes from the deep sea and all that. Yeah. Mike says cults are great for either short-term campaigns or full year-long ones. They provide an opportunity to add intrigue, surprise twists, yep, subvert expectations. I mean, there's nothing better than taking like a favored, uh, pretty, nice NPC and that's twisting the knife in your player characters and go like, well, that guess what? That person became a cultist. Yeah, and Samara makes a good point. Like, what is a cultist but a worshiper? What is a worshiper but a cleric? Exactly. I suppose you could make the difference between differentiate between a cleric and a warlock, which in my head canon, I go clerics are faithful first and receive power second, whereas more warlocky cultists are like, I want the power first, and then you get my devotion second, kind of thing. But that's just me. I mean, and that's just a gamified mechanical thing. But I bet the line is a lot, very much blurred, especially in fantasy. AJ says, how are people in the game world to know what is a good and acceptable path to power and what is actually supernatural deception or trap? That's true. I mean, there's no reason cultists would even think of themselves as like, yeah, I know I'm evil. Like they could easily be deceived by, that one pit fiend or Baylor that's like, I think I'm gonna move up the ranks this time, and become a named, fiendish overlord, and maybe they do convince and give real power to mortals. I mean, what a great excuse to give, leveled abilities to commoners without them having to go out and adventure, right? Some netherworld being instantly turns them into a ninth level caster, and they're like, oh, that was easy. No need to collect the gold for experience points. Little OSR-ish kind of thing. AJ's like, cults are as good as ninjas. They're always a cult lurking around. Yep, there is always a cult lurking around somewhere, right? And like I said, cults are a really good way of shorthand, especially at lower levels, to explain your world in short little concise chunks. Just like I look at taverns, like the reason why taverns are a commonality in role-playing games, it's not just because we've had them a long time, but a tavern is a microcosm of the rest of your world. It's a small place where you can where the PCs can find out, like, what's the politics, what are some of the supernatural dangers, what's the economy like, um maybe even simple things like what's the dress code, what's slang. If you want to explain the bigger picture of your world building and your 70-page primer your players will never read, let them go to a tavern and then just drop hints. Cults are kind of the same way. Cults can, like, a cult of a lich lets you know that there's a lich in the bigger wide world when the PCs interrogate them or find them or something. Maybe there's a cult to a dragon, and it lets them know about that kind of thing. And then if the cult has problems recruiting, again, it's a great way to explain to your player characters, like, oh, it's hard for us to recruit because there's I don't know, an order of knights that goes around to cleanse the the region or something. And so yeah, cults are, I think, is a good shorthand for, like, the evils in the world, even if it's evils that they're coming up against themselves. Mike says, really, it's the focus of the cult. It's the focus of the cult that sets the mood. A secret demonic cult, say, like one in Gratz, might hide in gambling institutions or brothels. One could find a Druidic circle on Zig Zigtomi. I can't remember. Is that one of the Lovecraftian horrors out there? Yeah, I mean, like, you're right. Like a cult devoted to a dragon might be, very greedy. They're out to get treasures and gold, whereas one devoted to a lich might be more arcane focused, um, burning down building homes or something while they go after scrolls and tomes, or even raiding libraries or something like that, um, kidnapping individuals that belong to, like, wizard schools or something like that. Whatever. Zamar says, to be honest, when it comes to in-game description, gives no difference between the two. Right? There is no in-game description between warlocks and clerics except for character generation. Yeah, and all deities and powerful beings have cleric and warlocks dedicated to them. Absolutely. And there's no reason to say that the player characters themselves wouldn't be looked at as cultists. You get that one player that's like, I don't know, like, they themselves pick a dragon to be their warlock patron or some kind of, like, clerical thing, and everybody else looks at them as, like, the PC's like, you're not in the mainstream. You know what I mean? Mm-mm-mm. AJ says, one thing that really opened up my mind's eye was that cults are a means for infernal powers to gain access to resources they can't access from their own infernal domains. Absolutely, they need, like, in the great. Okay, so uh, Forgotten Realms has this thing where demons and devils are battling each other, and that was set in motion on purpose so that neither side would gain influence over the mortal realm. But within even that war, there listen, they're fiends, they're fiendish powers. They all want their own power, right? So how do they gain power here in the mortal realm? Well, they have to have agents. And what a great way to introduce, like, these 20th level, 15th to 20th level PC adversaries in the lower levels, by just going, like, hey, they're not, if a third level character is confronted by, a pit fiend or a Baylor, it's not like they're going to have a fight. Maybe these creatures are seen through portals or mind controlled through the cultists. I mean, using mind control to influence the cultists, or the cultists themselves speak with the voice of these evils, and then this is a great way for you to introduce a big baddie, right? Like, oh, that pit fiend is like, oh, D- let it be known, I see you. I see you, low level characters. Don't worry, or maybe they don't see him. Maybe they're just like, oh, they're low levels. I'm not even going to acknowledge them. But the PCs are like, yeah, well, we see you. And uh, an, uh, another way to allow the big bad to have instant access to what who and what the PCs are, right? I mean, when we talk about gamifying the game, the fact that they can see and hear the PCs and what they're doing every step of the way, kind of gives them a little bit of a way to explain why they're using arcane powers against the player characters when they don't even know it. So yeah, Mike's Shadowrun had a great cult adventure where the PCs have to infiltrate a charity supposedly made to uplift the downtrodden, yet is a front for insect totems that warp victims into bug people. The one great thing about cults too is that they can be the heroes of the community. Yeah, the heroes of the community is like a great way for you to set up a cult, especially if they're a little bit more public and the community is basically raising their hands to the player characters like, stop, don't hurt them, they're helping us. Yep, Vampire the Masquerade has cults to old gods and faiths. Yep, absolutely. um Zamara says, once my funds are no longer dry, I plan on getting more TTRPGs, so I will add that to this. Yeah, Planescape you can still get print on demand, and I think they are scan pages, but you can get a lot of old stuff now, even in print form, which is it's kind of funny. The other day I was watching there's like a live stream, Heath's Geekverse or something, and people were talking. Everyone's today. Side note, talking about the problematic issues with Dark Sun. And I'm like, but you still have access to Dark Sun. It's not gone. It's just not updated. A little bit of the two. Mike says, Zog Tomoy is the queen of rot. She's made of rotting fungus, a great focus for spore druids. Oh, forgot it. Yes. Yes. Well, not Lovecraftian in nature, not necessarily written by Lovecraft, but yeah. Yeah. Mike says you could found an entire campaign over religious war. Two or more religious entities accuse each other of being dangerous cults, whereas they claim to be established religion. Real life, anybody? But yes, absolutely, absolutely. And in a certain way, both sides could be kind of right, which would be a pretty interesting twist to put on that. Mm-mm-mm. Uh-oh. Z says, I'm actually playing a kobold who's trying to start a cult. Uh, all while they're warlock to a lesser demon. Yeah, yeah. Well, there's cults represent a really great way to stack to stack your adversaries, right? Like there may always be somebody else in the shadows above the so-called big bad evil guy in the adventure. Start your players at first level. They the wizard that's third level, that's the head of the cult, thinks they're the head, but really there's somebody above them. And then the I don't know, let me pick something. The old hag that's against your fifth level party is actually really isn't the one because there's a Rakshasa behind them, and the Rakshasa's been recruiting. I mean, you could keep going up and up and up, right? Like you just do this. Maybe pyramid isn't the correct way. Iceberg. You could iceberg the whole thing where there's so much underneath it. So yeah, Mike says which touches on discussion of where a cult stops and a religion starts. Legitimacy. That's true. That is very true. There are, I guess, you could really claim in our modern day that every religion is a cult until it's considered legitimate, and then I mean, I suppose there's some real world religions that some of us would consider a little bit cult based, and we all always have real world religions where somebody in that group breaks them off, or you get someone who is, which is here's another oddity, someone who isn't a devotee of a cult, but they're a manipulator. And so then they manipulate other people into believing that the cult is about one thing, but really the manipulator is all about something else. Fiends are basically like that, right? Like, oh yeah, we're going to promise you power, but really what they're trying to do is get summoned out of the you know, the nine hells or the abyss, or what's the other one? Acheron or the other place. AJ knows all these, but but you get what I'm saying. A definition of a cult based on our current conversation: a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. And you can. There's plenty of excuses to incorporate like I'm going to say like asides for using cults. Like for example, maybe they're on the search for some kind of treasure and the PCs can follow them. Maybe there's some kind of rituals that turn the cultists into, and then open up the book, random types of monsters so that they have a different origin. Cultists could become anything from lycanthropes to drinking a concoction that bursts from their stomach to turn them into oozes, or some kind of, to them it's like an ascension, and then you can kind of reflavor, reshape your the kinds of conflicts you want in it by just changing the origins and just going, oh no, no, the cult summoned that, or the cults created them into these things or something. So it's kind of cool. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. My sis Mal Canthet is underused, really. She's the demon queen of succubi, setting up a great hook into the Malcanthet versus Gratz competition for the hearts of desire. I'm not familiar with that. Well, I'm familiar with succubi, incubi, like the seduction of a thing. I kind of think hags kind of fit in, like the idea that hags are both are like low level cultists unto themselves, that there's a transformative nature in hags, and we know hags tend to be female. Succubi are female versions of it, but if you just play with the gender roles in that, I mean, make them male, make them more subservient, have their true nature not be horrific, but have npcs in the world slowly start to transform. I think that's a really great twist to it as well. Mm, mm, mm. AJ says role playing games have always been a means to discuss these concepts, a step removed from real world institutions who wield social authority based on belief and traditions, hence the satanic panic. And like um, to further take that even further, we are now going through a transition. I know there's some people who are extremists on this within the tabletop RPG community on either side of the subject that I'm about to talk about, and that is sanitization versus um, no censorship in tabletop role playing games, and it's conflict with businesses, and how many of these twisted, decadent, evil aspects do we want to include in our tabletop role playing games, like torture, slavery, harm to animals and children. I mean, we already have monsters. I mean, that kind of borderline cannibalism, or at least eating other sentient creatures and things. And how much of that do we want to sanitize it so that we can get younger people into the game versus no sanitization at all and letting people run wild? And I lean more towards openness than shutting things out, because I mean, honestly, role playing games, if you don't have anything evil to punch in the throat, what's the point, right? Like, it's not, I mean, do we have sociopaths in the tabletop role playing game community? Yes, because you're going to get that in any larger population, right? You're always going to get the extremists that are like, oh, I don't think there should be any censorship at all. And I'm going, you say that now until somebody says something you don't want to hear, right? That's always the case. But in role playing games, like cults are the thing that where these are active individuals engaging in things that are actively horrific, and it's our job to stop that. Player characters, even some of the most evil-ish player characters that are like, I want to play somebody that's an evil character. Cults kind of like go a bit beyond some of these things, and I like it. Mike says a Rakshasa leader of a cult who's subverting other devils could set up a lesser of two evils game. That's another thing as well. Like, is is the origin of the cult the thing that's been holding back the big bad evil guy? And I mean, we've seen this plenty of times. There's a uh, not necessarily a cult, but it's like player characters are the cause of the thing that makes the thing worse, right? Like the evil cult was like, we were trying to hold back the onslaught of evil, and the PCs are like, well, yeah, but not the way you were doing it. Hack, hack, slash, slash. Now all of a sudden, the portal that the cultists were actually trying to keep closed opens up, right? It's the Game of Thronesification of a thing, like the Great Wall that's holding back the White Walkers. It's like in the beginning it was this big noble thing. Now it's a place filled with criminals and backstabbing and all that kind of stuff. And one hero goes up to the wall to like, I'm gonna clean up everything. I'm gonna stop what they're doing. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't. It may not be working the way you want, but it's still kind of working. Maybe we do need those criminals sent up here at least. Yeah, yeah. Like AJ was kind of on my page saying RPGs are seen as a direct threat to ideologues and charismatic gaslighters. Yeah, yeah, because I mean, unfortunately, role playing games are a place for us to imagine the world in which we want to live. And while we can imagine ourselves in another world, I think people are doing it uh not externally, they're doing it internally. Like, no, I would like to imagine a world in which it is a world in which I want to live in, and I want to imagine this world not having elements of other people's worldview. And it's a role playing games are a living way for us to do that. And yeah, some people can't separate their real life from fantasy. You know, Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. Mike's like, I've always wanted to do a lesser of two evils thing, where both demons and devils court the PCs for influence in the blood war. You know what? That's a very difficult thing to do. It's fun to do, but it is pretty difficult because at one point, on one hand, you kind of have to lie to the player characters, but on the other hand, you would have to like kind of let them know they're being influenced by demons and devils on either side. Yeah, AJ. Yeah, yeah, yeah. AJ's like, oh, hags, don't get me started. They are so deeply involved in primal lore in D&D and really do drive the blood war between the demons and devils, profiting off the conflict and reveling in pure evil. Yeah, and in their even in their minor descriptions, I'm so sorry. So even in their minor descriptions, like hags, basically they basically say like they enjoy the turmoil they create in societies and such, having them scramble and backstab each other. Like, yeah. No, 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 you did not say. Talking borderline cannibalism, Holy Communion, anyone? Better not mention that TPJ. I'm gonna mention it. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, if you really, really want to take it, I mean, could you imagine? Oh, shoot. I know this is going to be offensive, but could you imagine a cult that has a permutation of like a communion in which if enough people believe in devouring the body of a dead god, it brings them back to life? I mean, wow, that would be that would be pretty awesome. Zamar says, my answer to the question of how unpleasant conversation that you want to include all of it and adjust to what you can handle. Right? I tell people all the time, which people agree with in principle, TTRPGs are great for allowing people to explore to understand different viewpoints and situations, especially undesirable ones, sorry, such as sex offenders and child soldiers, in order to help explain why we don't want them. Exactly. Or the opposite, and this is hard for people to understand, to explain why people do want those things, not yet understanding that we don't want them, but why someone would go to that extreme, right? Yeah, Zamar says, which is perfect for children to breed more rounded adults, but then people don't want to deal with them because they are painful topics. I agree. Oh, I'm absolutely for it, right? Like it's like our proliferation of media where we love the bad guy, you know, The Sopranos and Breaking Bad and all the House of the Dragon and all these things are like understanding the mind of the air quote bad guy and finding out what happened. I mean, you could really uh, put into your players' heads like, hey, both both things can happen in our minds at the exact same time, as in everybody in this cult needs to be they need to be throat punched right now, right? Heads chopped, dead, no question. At the same time, understanding like maybe there is a big bad that caused these people to go towards this decadent cult, right? I just finished watching I think it's the last episode or next to last episode of The Last of Us, and how it's a post-apocalyptic world where people are like murder killing each other for various reasons, and you understand why they're doing it. You don't like it, right? But yeah, and as a matter of fact, even today, a lot of people turn charismatic individuals into you're so funny there, Z. Oh man, you just I'm gonna put the comment up there just because I understand what you're trying to say, and you're just like put the end right here, bam. Very good, but how many people have turned charismatic leaders into cult like figures because of a dedication to their ideology and whatnot, and then they put them on such a high pedestal that the devotees of those individuals explain away the most horrible actions, killing of children, killing of innocents, um, the the giving away of all of their the violence, the destruction that they do, all in the case of the greater good, right? And it can be really twisted. I mean, a cult could actually start by accident around the player characters. Aliup says, if I understand correctly, the hags do have the eye on things literally. Oh, yeah, the old classic hag, the blind hag with the orbs and like putting their eye on it and stuff. Yeah, and maybe they know something player characters don't know. I had a game where there was a hag that lived out in classic hag swamp, whatnot, and the hag was air quotes evil, but it was a necessary evil. Like the hag was like, I don't want the world to be destroyed. I like manipulating people, and we had player characters that would go to the hag because she had one thing that she would do is she would never lie. She was evil, but she would never lie to the player characters. Now she would twist the truths into people and manipulate people, but she would never lie. And it was like a weird like litmus test because the people who considered themselves to be good were lying to the population about how dangerous it was out there and things like that. And the hag was never lying, and it was a really good. That was a really now she wasn't really a cult leader, but it was a really cool kind of thing where she gave out. It was always hag's milk, and it was a reason why they had like ogres and ettins and cyclopses and minotaurs roaming around and stuff because they were kind of like her children. It was kind of cool. Anyway, AJ Pickett says, the way I see it, there are two means to discuss morals and ethics with your kids: role playing games and history lessons. Yeah, but both are actually quite important because kids play pretend games, right? Uh, we just happen to have really well laid out rules and games and dice and stuff, but essentially it's pretend, and I love it. I think something else that is really good about cults is that you could really introduce them at any point in your role playing world, whether it's from first level on, and it's a great excuse to have like it has a built-in threat level modulator. Like you always have your zero level devotees who are like not, I mean, they've been recruited, but they're still basically innocent. They're still kind of, if you want to use alignment, they're still neutral, but they're being manipulated, right? And then you have your like real devotees who wear like the cool robes, and you've got the incense and the braziers and the curved, the wavy sacrificial knife, because you got to have a wavy sacrificial knife. You got to have black and red somewhere in there, and people chanting and stuff. You got that level, and then you have like the ones that are truly manipulated, whether they have possessed by ghosts, they are mind controlled, their bodies are scarred and they can transform into something. Maybe they have certain access to certain kinds of magic that you just give them for, yep. Like AJ Pickett says, like feather fall for free, yes please. Yeah, regional effects of boss monsters are a perfect setup for cult worship. Like the local fishermen would love bronze dragons, the cliff dwelling honey harvesters would love silver and gold yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, why not? Don't forget the gold masks. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, like you said, feather fall for free, a great excuse to give, mechanical effects and give them a storytelling aspect to it, right? Like um any cult by a coastline that can breathe water even or hold their breath for an hour or more. I mean, hell yeah, they're getting rich off of pearl diving and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, of course they are. And it's the classic uh sacrificial person that's dumped into the volcano to appease the volcano gods, right? It's would they give up their loved ones or an innocent individual or um, appease what is it, the movie Apocalypto, right? Appease the gods before the eclipse comes and the gods blot out the sun. We might have to sacrifice a whole bunch of hearts to the gods to keep this from happening, right? And yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't forget the golden mask. You got to have the golden mask. What is it? Eyes wide shut, all this kind of stuff. Um, but also, cults might be the repository for knowledge about greater dangers into the outside world. So we had a series where we were talking about the OSR versus Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and some of the myths and such. And one of the great things about that was really delved with the OSR is that our entire role playing experience was brand new. And so exploration was important because we didn't know about lycanthropes. We didn't know about trolls and acid and fire. We didn't know about vampires in the beginnings of the games. And then as player characters got to find out that we know what trolls are. We know how to defeat hydras. We know how to defeat vampires. And over time, you needed to get a lot more of that information. Maybe cults are the way. Maybe it's not just talking to people in taverns. Maybe it's like, oh, this is like kind of a necessary evil because they know what the next danger is as we go on our adventure into the mountains. They know what the next danger is in the deep oceans off the coast. They know what the information because that information could be, oh, the difference between Yuan Ti or Koatoas or Sahogan versus a bronze dragon, right? And the player characters are, oh, it's a bronze dragon. Oh, whoo, I thought we were going to have to, fight krakens or something, Uh, yeah, Mike says, Mike, Conan, the first movie is a great example of cult influence. Deprogramming a cult figure could be a campaign long term goal. Oh, there's the one scene that you, having seen, being a man of a certain age, the scene in the original Conan movie where the cult leader takes his hand and beckons one of the followers, and that follower just jumps off the cliff. I was just like, that threw me for a loop for like months, probably years after I saw that. I was just like, "What?" As a kid, wait a minute, wait, what just happened? And the person just jumped. He was just like, "Come to me." I was like, "What the hell?" Yeah, the Conan movie and um, the Conan larger world is, they consider their spellcasters as like cultists, ritualists, and things like that, dark powers and whatnot. Not the not the wizarding world that we kind of see today in modern fantasy gaming. As far as the question of what is more important, the lives of those dear to you, or the lives of those dear to you, or the lives of those dear to you, or your life. Like, like for example, um, when we don't, the further away individuals are in our world, in our worldview, the less emotional attachment we have to them. And so, yeah, a cult could literally be formed because of a number of families, for example. And we just want to consider ourselves in our own family. I mean, hate to point this out, but in the United States, we've got, you could claim, I don't really want to point out, I hate bringing real world things because people get offended real easy. But the polygamous slash um, uh, Mormon, off to the side ish, Utah, Montana, Wyoming ish, like in our real world, like in United States. I mean, there's a lot of people who, heck, I suppose you could even go towards preppers, kind of fall into that category a little bit. Maybe not religiously. Cults don't necessarily need to be, I suppose, if we want to go away from fantasy, it doesn't necessarily need to be religious. It could just be a a way of thinking, or bringing about a way of shifting the world to appeal to a person's worldview, or a worldview they think is going to happen. Yeah, AJ Pickett says even a white dragon slumbering in a local cave for centuries, a glacier the locals harvest ice from for a century, store frozen food, famous for their snow cones. Yeah, don't kill our dragon. Yeah, yeah, yes, famous for their snow cones. Oh man, we have what is it? Shave ice is a version of that. Water ice, Rita's Italian ice is kind of a different version of that. Yeah, yeah. Don't kill our dragon, you bastards. Exactly, and maybe the dragon's just like, I've been asleep for a couple hundred years. What the hell happened around me? How much evil will the cult ignore or justify for the profit and power they gain? Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that is a question, and that even happens. That even happens today. How many abused children is an acceptable amount of abuse before you take the system down, right? How many children do we kill or recruit into a war that's an acceptable number before like you when you start breaking it down like that, it's like, ugh. Mike, hey Mike. Oh, Mike Maron's like, man, I wish I could watch this live instead of having to work. I love me some Colts, yeah. And I mean, yeah, we love AJ says, you are on the other side of the world from me, DBJ, but I am emotionally connected to you, my brother. Have a great night. Chat all. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, AJ is literally on the other side of the world. So have a very good evening. I'm glad you could join, and maybe insomnia is your gift to us. you know. So anyway, have a great one. We have to hook up with a I'll change my time schedule, AJ. I know he's gone, but we've got to do some live streams together or something. We haven't done so at all. Oh man, but I think he's moving towards my end of the woods, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, Mike Maron's like, man, I love some cults. Um, Zamar says, question: do you make cultists more likely to fight to the death, or less likely? What about clerics? What about warlocks? Now that's a good point too, because I mean, how haven't we've seen the fight to the death cultists that, like, they have no combat abilities. They're pretty much cannon fodder, because really what we want to get to is the ritual when they summon the big bad, and the cultists are in their robes, and we get to punch them in the throat, kick them off cliff sides, or whatever, right? Set them on fire, all that kind of stuff, right? But you know cultists that want to live to fight to it for another day, yeah, yeah, hell's yes. Yeah, the treasure the PCs are going after, maybe they scoop all that shit up and run, and the PCs are like, wait a minute, aren't we supposed to have a fight? And the cultists are like, see ya. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't they run? Or at least you could set up it. One of the most dangerous things about cults could be that the player characters never know who a member of the cult is. So when they go back to the town that they've always gone to where they felt safe, they went to the tavern and the blacksmith, and the magic shop and what and then they look around at the city and or a small village or wherever they feel comfortable and they look around and they go, Man, yeah. Which who's supposed to be Alley Oops is like, this is not Sparta. We're running for yeah. Yeah, I mean cultists could be the epitome of cowards, right? Like let me keep this up there. So I mean, if they're cowards and they go, listen, we just want to leave us alone. We give up. We put our hands up. We don't want to fight. Hey, you caught us. Here's our paperwork that we found to try to do the ritual that we were unsuccessful with. Just take us to the local constabulary. Take us to the marshal or whoever, the proctor or something. We'll give up. Yeah. Does that make the PCs murderers? Yeah, Michaels, his cults are essentially, yeah, are essentially weaponized philosophies or beliefs. Yep, it goes from a philosophy to a cult when harm becomes normalized. Ooh, so here's an example. I'm going to throw out an example, and I don't know if this is going to be good. Let's say there are dryads that live in the trees in the woods, and the city is trying to expand. City people are coming in from all walks of life. The city borders are expanding past the classic castle fort walls, and they're actually growing on the outside of the walls. And so they need to cut down some trees. The dryads are like, please don't cut down our trees. And instead of having a great conversation, they start, well, we need the trees and we need the dryads to move, and they won't move. So they start bringing the dryads into town and starting to drive them away. And then eventually, maybe they bring them into the town square to throw food at them and kind of like embarrass the dryads because we don't need them anymore. And they've been charming our young folk out in the woods or whatever, and then they start torturing them, and then they start imprisoning them and killing them. And what like at what point, right? And we know I mean, what are dryads? They're in the monster manual, right? They're in our monstrous menagerie. They are air quotes like orcs. They are the evil, and not necessarily evil, but they are, because they're in a monstrous book. We kind of consider them to be these outside monsters. But what if the cult turns the tables on like what is a monster when the monsters are like the local ogre and his little small group, maybe there's 10 to 15 of them, and the bigger ogres come into town to steal maybe cattle, maybe some beer, barrels of beer or wine, and all of a sudden now they're being hunted by these cultists. And the PCs are like, they're not really harming anybody, and the ogres are like, all we want to do is just drink and eat. Why are you like murder killing us? Zamar says there is a story, a great story, considered to be one without conflict. It's about a utopia. The ones who walk away from Omelas. Like conflict in a utopia, or a successful cult could have created a utopia like society on the backs of something else, right? Like maybe the PCs come along, the cultists that have already succeeded, and it only costs the lives of children or something, or the sacrifice of people who are above the age of 30, or any number of other you have to sacrifice an important memory, a traumatic memory. And for the people that live there, they're happy because they don't have any traumatic memories. But maybe reliving some of those traumatic memories is what's been fueling the ghosts or something that travel around, or every memory that's stolen becomes a banshee or a will-o-wisp or something like that. Zamar says, I would recommend reading it. To me, it forms the core of what people are willing to sacrifice in order to obtain peace. And even then, not everyone is as willing. About the ones who walk away from Omelis? Ome- I'm pronouncing it wrong. I know it. I know I am. But I didn't know that was a book. Yeah, it forms the core of what people are willing to sacrifice. in order to obtain peace, and even then, not everyone is willing. Yeah, I mean, it's the well, like in The Last of Us, right? The zombie, and this has been what is it? The Last of Us. There's another movie called The Girl with All the Gifts. It's the idea that there's an individual who's immune to this zombie virus, or in that case, fungal virus, or it could be whatever the case may be. Do you sacrifice an innocent individual to save the lives of, dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions? And how much of that sacrificing do you continue to do? And we see that today, right? We see people who are willing, they they are willing to rationalize their own sacrifices. Yeah. Mike says cults are a great add-on to other elements to explain motivation. Yep. Because, for example, cults plus pirates equals cult to a drowned god. Cult plus order of paladins equals holy war. Yeah. Cult plus Koatoa, reality warping. It goes on and on. Oh, absolutely. And if you attach a cult to something, especially like doing the twist on the concept, we attach a cult to something that normally doesn't have a cult attached to it. Dragons are a good example. Lycanthropes. What are some other like strange ones? Like you said, pirates and paladins making a holy war, and one of the most difficult things to do is, let's go with the paladins, right? You have a paladin, you have a holy order, and the minute it starts to twist, one of the most difficult things you'll find, especially this is a reflection of real life into role playing, is very few factions police themselves, right? Like they're very good at policing other groups outside of themselves. Very hard to they're very difficult to insularly police themselves. Now they will get rid of people who aren't devotees. That's a given, right? A faction that starts to get more and more extreme will test the limits of the people that are part of it. Street gangs are a perfect example, right? Street gang starts out with a bunch of young people hanging out. Maybe they just want to hang out, underage drink, smoke weed, hang out in the park. Eventually, somebody's like, hey, let's throw a tag up on the wall. Well, that's defacing property. Well, you're not down with us, right? And it goes on. And then it's violence, random violence, attacking innocent people, attacking other groups. They go from using fists to carrying weapons to, bludgeoning and bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing weapons to firearms to right, and it goes on, and each level is more extreme, and either you stick with them or you get kicked out, or you're violently kicked out, or your life is ended, and it gets more extreme from there. But very few times does a group look into themselves, a street gang goes, maybe we shouldn't be as violent. Maybe we should stop right here. That usually is never the case. And the same goes for the opposition, right? Law enforcement taking a little too far, politics taking things a little bit too far. And so, yeah, cultish isms, if we're talking about twisting things until it kind of hurts. Yeah. Mike says cults were a heavy presence in Star Trek, uh, the original series. Be they to machines like the Red Hour, or with children worshiping an apocalyptic angel. I don't remember too much of the original series, and I watched it too, but it went in my head and just disappeared. I don't know, but yes, Star Trek, like role playing games, was a great place for us to look at the to make a science fiction reflection of issues we had today, and cults are a great way to do that. Now mind you, you don't need to make a cult that's an exact replica of a religious institution today, but I would use that as a mechanism to go, I always wanted to use, like, for example, like, oh, I always wanted to use I don't know, like mimics and doppelgangers, but I don't know how to incorporate them into my world. Oh, maybe there's a cult of people dedicated to these shape changers, right? Like maybe there is a reason why there are shape changers in the world, and there's a cult that's been protecting them and hiding them in their society, maybe hoping to the people that are part of the cult don't want to be who they are, but one day will transform them form themselves, and maybe they're the ones who've been sneaking mimics into the royal families um uh behind the closed doors of the royal family on purpose, right? Like, here's a gift to the royal family, but what is it? It's really just it's really another mimic. you know a cult to a town-sized mimic. Free housing and food. Just leave a citizen in an empty room once a month. yeah, yeah. When those town folk come in with their harvested uh, supplies or goods and services that they make, and they're dropping off mimics here and there. Yeah, you never know. Maybe that's a good reason for them learning to cast spells like alter self or disguise self. What's some other ones? Even polymorphing, or some kind of like version that you have in your world of like some kind of lycanthropic transformation. And again, this kind of makes a starts to twist a little bit of a story. And of course, like, talking about fiends, because that's a common thing when it comes to cults and fiends. Well, how the heck did they get to the real world? It, how how do I bring demons and devils into the prime material plane for no reason? Well, cult is a good reason, right? They summoned it, or they inhabited the minds or souls of the cultists themselves, or once. uh, how many times have we seen this? The cults need to sacrifice innocent people because there needs to be a blood offering. How many till the thing happens? Tension starts to build. They've killed three people, two more, and it'll appease the being on the other side of the portal that's being summoned, or in the pentagram on the ground or whatever. Um, exactly. Mike's a shape changer cult of the chrysalis. We shall change like the butterfly. Yeah, and they don't. And they don't. They just feed a massive mimic in the basement. Yeah. Yeah. Well, or hmm, when a maybe they believe when a doppelganger takes on the role of one of the members, they think that member has ascended, but they really haven't. So yeah, a cult could be completely wrong, and so right. So anyway, we're coming to the end here. Cults are really cool. They're just there's a reason why we continue using them, even though that they're a little tropish. I would suggest just twisting them a little bit, um, like the yin yang symbol. The dark side has a little bit of a light in it. The light side has a little bit of dark. So maybe give your cult like some kind of positive trait to it. Maybe they feed the homeless, or they help in getting rid of the rats in the city, or something of that nature, right? Uh, maybe there is I don't know, like I'm trying to think of, maybe they have a lot of resources that help the community out. Um, Maybe there is a something good. Also, if you want an excuse to bring in other elements into your world, maybe you just have a hankering for like insects and in your world, or one section of your world, or giants, or dragons, or oozes, or plants, or something. Cults are a really good excuse to for why those things are maybe in urban centers, when it doesn't make sense to have giant insects running around an urban center. They make a really good excuse to have certain kinds of arcane abilities that you just take some random NPCs, um, reskin some stat blocks, give them some arcane powers, and you're done. Absolutely think you've heard me make my go tos: hags, sphinxes, naga, yuan-ti, ogre magi or oni. Those rakshasa. Those are my go tos. They got a little magic. They're a little bit tough. They make great cult block stat blocks. Um, that kind of thing. Zamara says, "Oh, I got it. Follow me closely now." Okay. The player's favorite NPC dies. So they petition a high ranking cleric to revive them and successfully do so. That NPC, though, seems slightly off. They speak about knowing things now, having seen the truth of life that they much teach others. And when they start speaking to people, those people become successful, happy even. I like that. I'm liking that. Yeah, maybe those people they speak to, they they become more successful, maybe even a little bit more healthy. They they aren't as dependent on the PCs to like help them out anymore. You know, suddenly their business starts to get better, their acumen starts to get better, and their kids are like, boy, they're growing like weeds. you know, yeah. Samara says, all this NPC is doing is talking. That's it. Telling people about what they have seen in their death. But soon, those who don't take them seriously start having bad things happen to them. Ooh, ooh. I mean, like, who's to say how something starts? Like your example, maybe this individual, literally has nothing to do with the cult. It's just them talking, rant like and we've seen this happen before where someone goes through a particular experience and they start sharing it and then other people start picking up on it and other people start building uh, a cult of personality around this individual or they use the words from this other individual and they they there's a switch that happens in their brain and they start changing their lives and the person who's speaking is like, look, all I'm doing is just telling them words so that they can live their best life, right? We see that online too, right? It's people who are successful, they write books, they're motivational speakers, and they go, I didn't tell them to jump off that cliff, I just told them to live their best life. And then all of a sudden, yeah, smart, yeah, small things at first, losing keys, meals going bad, breath smelling worse, but it escalates. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe this person who had who um came back from their experience going into the nether realms, maybe they never knew they they went into the nine hells and didn't realize it because you know um illusions and lies. Maybe they thought they went to like the what is it, the happy hunting grounds. What's another one from Planescape? Oh, I can't remember all the heavenly, the good aligned planes, the good aligned moral planes. But anyway, they come back and they start talking like, "Oh, it was awesome. Like you went to the nine hells." No, I didn't. I didn't. And all of a sudden, like you said, things start going bad wherever they walk. Fields, they're like, you need to open your minds and come to me. Your fields are not growing. They're overcome with insects and disease and the plants and everything. But that's your fault. You should have listened to me, right? Mike Marin says, I love the trope of an irate peasant mob blaming people. Yep, literal witch hunts. My failing crops, it all started when that tiefling came to town. Yeah, yeah. Hey, listen, like that's kind of the MO of hags, right? Like if you read the description of hags and like the monster manuals, they're not frontline fighters, right? They kind of like cause chaos in people's lives and maybe a little bit of bad luck, a couple of hexes here and there. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Zamar says it turns out the NPC made a deal with a demon coming to life. Yep, a deal allowed by the cleric's deity in order to give the NPC their wish. The NPC did nothing wrong, and half the town is thriving now. But what about the other half? What do you do? Yeah, there's that fine line. Like cleric, warlock, a little bit of both, and especially if the person made a deal. Now you could do it. Uh, e- Either way, this works excellently. If the person that came back to life knew they made a deal with a shall I say despicable entity to come back to life, especially if they were given great promises and those promises came true. Like, oh, you brought me back to life, but you won't risk my family. And the demon looking very angelic is like, I promise you, I will never bring harm to any member of your family and bloodline. Right. And it's like they promised I won't do it. Maybe other entities will. But for right now, I'll give you a little bit of the power. I'll make you successful. I'll make sure your family stays healthy. I'll do that for you. And they're like, "Oh, well, this is working out great. The community's awesome." But what about everybody else? Yeah, Mike says this reminds me of a hag who lived down a well who convinced a farmer to poison others' crops. Yeah, yeah, like if you just do this one thing for me, I'm just asking a small favor. You don't have to, but listen, others have done this, done a favor here and there, and what um there are real world people today who think they're clerics, but they're really warlocks, right? Like, why are they part of a religion? Because they kind of want the power, right? They're like, could I have a couple of miracles come my way? Because I really need a couple of miracles right now. Before it's not the belief first, power later. It's the power first, belief secondary, right? Like, listen, divine being from beyond, if you do this thing for me, I will be completely devoted to you, but do this thing for me. And who in our right mind wants to wait 35 years for their blessing, right? We kind of want it right now. No one goes, "Oh, I don't care how terrible my life is. Just make the lives of my future ancestors great. Don't worry about me. I don't mind dwelling down in the muck and mire and being abused." People were more like, I kind of want to be rich, famous, and successful, and smarter, and taller, and more attractive. And if those things start happening relatively immediately, yeah, yeah, I can see that all of it. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. Yeah, Mike Mayer says this is giving me some great ideas for my game this week. Once again, oh yeah. Listen, listen. This is all about stealing ideas, man. We're just handing it out like candy. The hive mind is much smarter than the individual. You guys give up you guys add the fuel. I just ignite it. That's all I do. So, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. Thank you, M Square, for being coming in as well. He's like, damn it, I wish I could get it live. Thank you for finding the show during daylight saving time. I know here in the States we're used to it, but sometimes we don't align for people who are outside the United States. So, but anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Tomorrow is Tuesday, so Tuesday is Level Up Advanced 5th Edition Tuesday. We're going to get into the next two classes, which I believe is the cleric and druid, maybe, or we might even do martial um, martial maneuvers. Not really sure yet. Either one of those, but anyway, that'll be tomorrow because there's a lot of people who are finding the channel due to Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. And lastly, we will be talking a bit about thank you so much. We will be talking a bit about Cool Name Goes Here. It was a Kickstarter that I'm part of. We're getting into the design phase, and the game is going to be designed to be given away for free. So I'm one of the consultants on it. Of course, they brought me in to talk about exploration and kind of those pillars of exploration and using that. And so I'm going to be coming at it from 3 points of view. So you'll hear a little bit about that. Lastly, I found a ton of free open gaming license with SRDs that are small time publishers, big time effects. A lot of them are coming from Italy for some reason. So look forward to that as well. So, which and when that's going to happen, I don't know yet. So, thank you very much, Z. Hey, have a wonderful day as well. Yep. Don't forget to create cults wherever you go. Yeah, you see people standing in line at the grocery store, they're cultists. Anyway, guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace.